Hi, I'm Eileen Roche, founder of Designs and Machine Embroidery, and I am delighted to be here today. Welcome to this episode of Between Friends. We're going to talk about Nancy Zieman's favorite things. And why, you probably ask? Well, we're going to do that because this is a very special week. Tonight at Wisconsin, the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show, you're going to be able to register and for free and view the documentary Nancy Zieman Extraordinary Grace at 7 p.m. Central Time. So in today's program here, I have a special guest, Marj Russell, who was the co-author of Seems Unlikely, Nancy's autobiography. And we're going to discuss some of her favorite things. So before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at the dime doors, because I know so many of you have been working along all year. And there we have January through April. And remember, these doors are free on our website all year long. And I encourage you to take advantage of that and, download them and make your doors. So here we have May through August, and then our most recent is September, and it is the gnome. That's a tree that has some falling leaves and just the beginning of fall starting to come into the arena. And of course, I'm working on October, which will be released the last Thursday of the month. And as you can guess, it'll probably have a Halloween flair. So let's take a look at some of the doors that you have been doing. Sarah Jones did the one on the left. Oh, it's really sweet. Love the polka dot fabric that she used for the windows. And Brenda Agner, she is reading The Hobbit right now. So she kind of dedicated hers to The Hobbit. That's super cool. And Candy Bray has used some very colorful fabrics for her door. And Dwani Howard, I love how she used that variegated thread for the stones that lead into the little gnome door. Super cute. Jane Morris and Muriel Butler. Look at the beehive that Muriel added. But this is a fabulous example from Elisa Gentry. Take a look at what she did. She added so much more dimension to hers by adding a path that starts at the base of the trunk and works its way into the background. She added some trees off in the distance and also a tree, kind of in the foreground, really cute. Notice the welcome mat, how she shaped that. So it's not just a plain rectangle. She has it angled so that it really looks appealing and welcoming. She also has added some lace to the windows, and I believe she has a silver charm added as a door knocker. And we can't forget the tiki torch, because I know that that's a freebie from our friends at OML OML Embroidery. I see we have some comments over here. Julia Markovitz, you said, is this going to start soon? And we are on. I hope that you all can see me. So if you would just give me a good thumbs up or, a heart or something like that, so I know that you can hear and see us. I do see a lot of comments coming in. Some of our friends, Laura is joining us from Lincoln, Nebraska. And we have Sandy from Texas and Charlene from South Carolina. So, and Deborah Jones is thankfully jumping in and telling, if you're trying to find it, go to the left side of the Facebook page to videos and you can find it there. Okay, and Ashley, my good friend Ashley, is saying she can see and hear. So I think we're in good hands. So maybe it's time to get started with our guest. My guest today is Marj Russell. Hello, Marj. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Eileen.
Good. Here's an image of Marj and Nancy at the Quilt Expo, Wisconsin Quilt Expo. And what year was this, Marj?
That was 2013.
2013.
Fall of 2013.
Marj, you have a lengthy career in editing and writing. So why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about your past?
My past involves words in some way or another. I was the executive editor of American Quilter magazine for the American Quilter Society for 5 years. and that was from 2000 to 2005. And when I left AQS, I went freelance. After a few months, I went freelance with my work, and I started writing articles for them. So I met Nancy as one of those articles.
Oh,
So
lovely. And so you really, when we were speaking earlier, wanted to clarify that you co-wrote that seems unlikely was really in Nancy's words, written in her words, correct?
it was, Nancy approved every single word in that. I brought to the table, I interviewed lots of people, including Nancy. I think I had between 80 and 100 hours of taped interviews with people. And
Wow.
it was wonderful because those helped me develop some of the things that we talked about, Nancy and I talked about. Um, it was fun to work with her on this because Nancy was not a hard person to work with. She wanted you to use your creativity, and uh, that was very helpful to do. So, Eileen, I've lost a little track here, but
That's okay. But Nancy really seemed to bring out the best in everyone. She really did,
absolutely.
whoever she worked with. And I learned so much from her for sure. And so as I was planning, this presentation today that you and I would share together, I thought, well, I would imagine our viewers would want to know what were some of Nancy's favorite things. So I thought we would share a great story that is over on Nancy Zieman's blog, which you can, her team, Nancy Zieman production team, still keeps that blog alive. So there's lots of information there and lots going on. But in 2017, and you can read this post over on Nancy's blog, but in 2017, her mother and stepfather Warren gifted her with a barn quilt for their family farm. Now, that farm has been in the family for 4 generations. So the sketch that you see in the center there is Nancy's sketch of the spool quilt block, which was her favorite block. And we can tell why, right? We all know why. And the image on the right is of the finished quilt of the barn quilt. Now, interestingly enough, Margie, it was painted by the art program at a local high school. That high school, I think it's Menosha.
Okay.
Right. And they did 20 barn quilts that year as a class project. And so today it still is on the family farm. What a wonderful gift that was from Barbara, her mother, and the stepdad. So, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Barbara in a moment, because eventually we're going to get to some of the big topic for today, which is tonight's broadcast of Nancy Zieman Extraordinary Grace, which, Marge, you had a big part in. But I know whenever I would show Nancy a quilt or a quilt block that was pieced, and I would say, well, Nancy, how should I quilt this? And she would say, oh, just put some swirly thing on. Literally, that's what she would say. And I love that about her. So this week's special is our Swirls and Paisley fillers. I mean, I think that's just the natural way to go, is to segue right into that. And this is what's in those collections. You're going to find half square triangles that are just these really pretty paisleys and swirls that fill a very pretty space, and circles that come in multiple sizes and different designs in each one. The diamonds are just gorgeous. So you'll find both 45 degrees and 60 degrees. So let's head over to a sample that I stitched so that you can see for yourself just how pretty it is. What I really love about these designs, now here are the squares, that's one full design, It has just one start and one stop. It starts and stop at the same place. There's no tie off. So every one of these designs is just a long, continuous design, except for this one, which allows you to stitch these corner designs in a separate color. So you do have different colors there, but all the others are just these really pretty, big, open, flourishes. They're just lovely. Nancy would have loved that. I know, I'm confident in that for sure. So, and this week's special, of course, you could purchase that on our website. It's only $39.99 with free shipping. So take advantage of that. So now let's get back to Marj and some of the exciting things that are happening tonight. Now, I know that you and I have both already seen Nancy Zieman Extraordinary Grace.
Yes.
So, and you have a very big part in it. You interviewed with Grant Fenster, the producer, and tell me a little bit about that experience.
Grant is a young man, I think, who has a great future ahead of him. He has, as an interviewer myself, I appreciated his interviewing skills. He just had the ability to draw things out of you. And he has wonderful facial expressions, and he gets involved in the story that you're telling. And It is so much fun. He was just a delight to work with. I've worked in television a little bit myself, and this was the first time I had been on the opposite end of the camera. And
not so easy,
not
right?
so easy. And it was just, he made it so much fun.
Great. He was lovely. But he never met Nancy.
I know he never did, but
right?
He certainly came to know her.
He sure did. And he really, in that documentary, has truly expressed her spirit and soul. I think he captured that perfectly. He really did. Yeah. And I was so impressed with Barbara.
Yes, Nancy's mother.
Oh, her interview on this documentary is very moving. And she talked, and Marj, then you and I talked about how when you interviewed her for Seems Unlikely, that you had quite an experience with her also.
Yes, she was talking about the day that they discovered that Nancy had Bell's palsy. And she walked down the hall from her bedroom to Nancy's bedroom to get her in the morning. And Nancy was just lying on her back. She was 14 months old at that time, lying on her back, looking up at her mother, very serious expression on her face. But something was wrong with her face. And as I was talking to Barbara was doing this kind of gesture. She was pulling down on her face. And it was as if this mother felt this all over again.
Right.
And it was quite an experience to see her reliving the pain of finding out that something was wrong with Nancy, because she could have gone next door to her mother-in-law, next door, and she could have gone to her husband who was out in the barn. But instead, as a mother and a daughter herself, she called her mother and said, please come. Something wrong with Nancy.
Absolutely. Well, we won't share everything that Barbara reveals, because there are some really beautiful moments and comments, and it's very special. Yes. But there's also some, we'll find out about some of her favorite things that it's kind of revealed if you watch the whole program. But I know that Nancy, she loved her family, and that's very evident in tonight's program. She loved her faith. She was a Christian, she wasn't really able to portray that on public television. You're very limited as to what you can talk about. And she had 23 minutes to nail today's program into that time slot. But That was a very big part of her life, right, Marge?
Yes, it was. Absolutely. And at her funeral, her favorite verse was on a tapestry above the altar at her
That's right.
church.
Yep. Proverbs 3, 5, 6, right?
3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and
Yeah.
lean not on your own understanding.
And she was, speaking of that verse, she was such an avid letter writer, thank you note writer. And, she would send me that verse on a mini Post-it note. And she had the most beautiful handwriting. And, just stuck to maybe a sample or something that she had to mail to me. And, she would stick that on there. So I have lots of treasures from Nancy that I still have for sure. But Marge, we were laughing earlier about how Nancy with the thank you letters, right? Literally,
Yes.
I would tape with her at Madison, and we'd have a wonderful couple days, and then we'd hug goodbye. I'd get on a plane, and when I got home, I swear there was a thank you card in my mailbox. Right?
She had a very well-developed sense of courtesy.
She really
And,
did. She really did.
her gratitude, that's where the extraordinary grace comes from, I'm sure. She was a woman of gratitude.
She was a woman of gratitude. Mm-hmm.
And she expressed that often.
She did. She felt very blessed. And she was blessed, as many of us are. But it would. And so what else did she love? So I know some of her favorite foods were, for a treat, she liked black licorice, which I didn't really like. She also liked raspberry tea.
Okay.
Yeah. And pickled ginger. Nancy and I used to go out for sushi whenever we could. She lived in a small town in Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, and they did have one sushi restaurant later in the years, but when she came to Dallas, we would always make sure to go out for something like that. And she loved the pickled ginger. I mean, we'd have to order like several. I always kind of wanted to bottle it up and mail it to her, but I never did.
Yeah, I'm sure that rural Wisconsin isn't abundant with pickled ginger.
That's right. Of course, Madison is quite the foodie town, but
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't far from Madison.
Right. And so on tonight's program, there's going to also be a Q&A after the viewing with Grant Fenster and Laurie Gorman, who was the executive producer of Sewing with Nancy for many, many years. Yes. And so in order to watch, you have to go over to quiltshow.com and register. It's free. All you have to do is just register and then click on the schedule link so that you can register for tonight's program. That starts at 7 p.m. and it is going to be about 90 minutes, I believe. The program itself is a little over an hour, and then it'll be followed by Q&A. And we will be, all of us will be, including all of you, will be able to sign in and enter comments and ask questions. There'll be a chat window, so you can really, participate with Laurie and Grant. And I imagine eventually this will be released on public television. But if your local station, there's a good chance they won't pick it up. You may not be able to air it unless you are definitely in Madison. So I would encourage you, if this is something you want to see, that you should go there tonight. And of course, that Wisconsin Quilt Show has already started. It opened today, Marge. Marge, how many years did you visit Quilt Expo? Did you get there more than once?
I got there twice, I believe it was. And a really nice experience. It's a wonderful quilt show. Very wonderful. You could see Nancy's hand all over it.
You sure can. And, I didn't grab a slide of everything that's going on there. I did most certainly of the 4-H virtual community quilt, because this is just such a great program and so dear to Nancy's heart. And if you watch the program tonight, you'll know why 4-H was so important to her. But here's some of the quilt blocks that have been posted in that virtual quilt, but there's also the quilt competition. There is a botanical quilt themed category, and there's the cherry wood fabrics. Bob Ross, the famous painter on PBS, there's all these quilts that are centered around that. So that's super fun, I think, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I did get my quilt block up there finally. I know I shared my ideas last week, and then here it is stitched. So, whew, got that done. Thank goodness. But Wisconsin public television is their biggest fundraiser is the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. So if you could find it in your heart to donate to them, that would be really lovely. And you can do that on this page. $5, $50, whatever you can spare would really be appreciated, because we want to go there next year, right? In person, right, Marj?
Absolutely. For them to use a quilt show as their major fundraiser is a great statement of how quilting has become accepted.
Yes.
And people are starting to regard it as something important.
Oh, I think so, yeah. And in your experience as executive editor of American Quilt Retailer, right? Is that the title?
No, American Quilter Magazine.
American Quilter Magazine, pardon me. I mean, that, you watch the growth of quilting, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And tried to track it.
Yeah. And, the barn quilts, I mean, when you travel in rural areas, I love looking out for those barn quilts, right?
There's so many now, and it's so much fun to see.
It started in Ohio and has really, I know we have many here in Texas and, of course, Wisconsin. So, whenever you're on the road, keep your eye out for them. They're really quite lovely, right? That
picture of the quilt on Nancy's family farm. Yes. That barn is still in use today. Wow. They use it as a place for calves. It's no longer a dairy farm. They raise calves for milking later.
Okay. So and this is the 4th generation, right?
Yes. 4 generations. A long time it's been in the Lidke family.
Right. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, we sure do miss Nancy. That I can tell you. And we've had some nice comments here. Lorraine has said she enjoyed all the years that we had to learn from Nancy. She was such a beautiful woman. And then Misha says she remembers being 10 years old and being so upset that her own grandmother had just died without finishing all the sewing techniques that Misha needed to learn. But Nancy was there to teach her. So that's pretty cool, huh?
That is wonderful.
Yeah, I know. And Becky Munns, she learned so much from all of her shows. And she always gives her credit for teaching her how to sew. I do too, because I did take a beginner lesson in a local sewing machine dealer in the Philadelphia suburbs. But after that, it was all Nancy for sure.
Yeah.
And Susan Lady, she still uses the wrap corner technique that she learned from Nancy Zieman. She uses it on every sewing project that has a corner. And it's a great technique. It gives you nice sharp corners when you bend down and capture that seam allowance in the next stitching line, right?
Right.
Very nice. Let's see. And Laura, she says she absolutely loved Nancy. She watched and recorded Nancy every week. Yeah. And, Nancy, Sewing with Nancy still is on PBS in many areas. Yep, for sure. So it's great to hear that. Some people still get that program. I actually don't get it here in Dallas, but I can watch online, which is wonderful. And, WPT.org is the Madison, Wisconsin Public Television station, and that's where you can go and find. That's the home of Sewing with Nancy shows, and you can find all past episodes there, which is really great.
I found it interesting in the documentary that Grant even interviewed a couple of camera people from the show.
Absolutely.
And That was delightful. I won't
Les-
say what they said, but it
right.
was a delight.
Leslie and Cassie are two just wonderful women that did the camera work for Nancy for many years. And yeah, they're delightful. You'll see them tonight. And I had the pleasure of having a lovely lunch in Nancy's backyard with the two of them and Nancy about 5 weeks before she passed. And it's the last time that I spent with Nancy outside, kind of in the garden. And we had some chuckles because these two ladies are very funny women. So that was super fun. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then, Misha says that Hulu just started offering It's So Easy, which is different program. Sorry, I thought you were going to say Sewing with Nancy. And then Ben White is also on the program tonight, and he was the producer of Sewing with Nancy, right?
Yes.
And he shares some interesting comments. And of course, her husband, Rich, and the boys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they really, Tom and Ted.
Yes, they didn't miss anybody. I think that they have, well, I'm sure that there are lots of people that could have been included, but some key people from Nancy's Notions, there was such a history there of how her and Rich built that company, and just the whole story is fabulous.
I think it's so wonderful that Nancy never took credit for everything. Everyone saw her and regarded her as the face and the persona of Nancy's Notions and Sewing with Nancy, but she always brought in the people who helped make it possible.
Right. She used to say it should be, Sewing with Nancy and Donna and Deanna and Patty and Kathy and Diane and on and on. And she's right. There were a lot of hands in it. But Gail O'Grady says that she loved her Sew for Fun series, how wonderful it was that Nancy inspired her own grandchildren like that. And she says that she watched it a dozen times or more, usually sobbing each time. I know, Gail, lots of tears. And you should have a box of tissues tonight when you're watching.
Yes.
Right?
Eileen, when I first met Nancy and I was doing an interview with her for American Quilter, we had a box of Kleenex between us.
Oh.
And people in the background were quiet and listening. Yeah. We were in a very public place when we were talking, but they stopped to listen, and it was very moving. Nancy was not afraid to let us know who she was.
I think for decades, Nancy hid, her true self behind that strong business persona and success that, she portrayed to so much of her audience. And I think it was probably a relief later in life to be able to share who she really was with people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that really began with a program in which she started talking about Bell's palsy.
Yes.
And I think that opened the door to a lot of things in her life and in her interaction with her fans and family and friends.
Right. In 2014, I wrote a blog on a blog post on my blog about Nancy's her Bell's palsy and how to go through life with half a smile. And I talked all about what would that be like to enter a room and to be on camera and just all of those fun challenging moments. And I had tons of comments, dozens of comments, and one woman said that she had Bell's palsy and that she was becoming a recluse. She wouldn't leave her house until her mother showed her Sewing with Nancy, and it literally changed her life.
Oh, how awesome.
Yeah. And so in tonight's program, you're going to see some of those tidbits. You're going to hear the doctor who came on Sewing with Nancy in Nancy's Corner and talked about the affliction and, how it happens and that there's nothing they can do about it, no matter what year it is, right, Marge?
At the time when it happened, had steroids been available, that may have provided some relief, but they were not. So she was not able to get that help.
Right. Yes, that's true. So, but there's just so many little tidbits that you'll learn tonight about her, and it just give you a better understanding of who she really was. We all looked at her like, the wrapped corner technique, and I learned how to do binding from Nancy, and I still refer to so many books that I have in my sewing room. If I'm struggling with a certain technique, I'll go to her. I remember I was making my daughter's wedding gown, and it was satin. Why she chose satin, but you can't talk the bride out of anything, right?
Right.
Satin's so hard to work with. Anyway, and I was trying to put in this invisible zipper, which was not being very invisible.
Satin, yeah.
Yeah, and so I called Nancy. It was a Saturday morning. I'm like, I hesitated to call her because like she is my dear friend, but she's also Nancy, sewing with Nancy. Like, I shouldn't call her for that. Anyway, I did in desperation. And she said, "Oh, just cover it up with lace." Yeah.
Intensely practical.
Yeah. I know.
You talk about things that she enjoyed.
Yeah.
One of the things that most people don't know is that she really enjoyed swimming.
Oh, yes, she did. Yeah.
And often did it every work day when she was in town.
Right.
The YMCA was very near her office. So she'd often go swimming before she came to work. And they even had a pool in their backyard, which in Wisconsin was usable only a few months out of the year.
Sure. But, she had an athlete's body. I mean, she was tall and slim, and you're going to see images tonight of her as a very young woman. And you could see where she could have been on the swim team, for sure. Yeah. And although she had a lot of other health issues, but she was so comfortable in the water. She sure was. And Dory Hobson just wrote, and she said, "Oops, sorry, I missed the details on when and where to see the program, and can it be watched later?" Well, I don't know if it can be watched later, but you can watch it tonight at quiltshow.com. So go to Quilt Show now and register on to the show, and then go to schedule and select the Nancy Zieman Extraordinary Grace, and they will send you a link to watch tonight. So it's kind of a closed platform. I don't know that it will be replayed, anytime soon. Probably not in this platform, and I don't know when it would actually be released on PBS. So go to quiltshow.com right now, register, and sign up to watch this, and they'll send you a link, and you can watch in the comfort of your home tonight. So I hope that answered your question, Dory. And Retha, let's see. And Sharon Schroeder says that she was lucky. She is lucky enough to continue to watching her on PBS, and that she gets a misty each time she says bye for now, knowing that we won't truly see her again. Such a phenomenal woman. Well, if you share the faith that Nancy had, you will see her again. Right, Marj?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
She believed that with all her heart and wanted other people to believe it as well.
She sure did. Mm-hmm. And she used to, she told me in her last weeks that she wasn't afraid of dying. She wasn't afraid to die. She was afraid of dying and what that process would be like because of her health just disintegrating so quickly.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But on the lighter side, there's joyful moments. You'll see Nancy very young, and lots of fun, like little snippets into the Nancy's Notions warehouse and the building of that whole business, and all those fun things, right?
Yes. Nancy and Rich were a great team.
They were. Mm-hmm. And Rich was a fabulous caregiver. Her, her health really struggled for several years. She had breast cancer, bone cancer. She had other problems that you'll see when you learn tonight. And Rich was always by her side. and provided the absolute best care that could come into Beaver Dam, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And Madison was nearby, so
Yep.
she had good care in Madison as well.
Yep. And they converted their master bedroom into pretty much a hospital space for her. She was able to end her time in the comfort of her home with her family nearby. So there's really no better way to go, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll be so interested to see the comments that we see tonight on the show. And I know I'll be watching. It'll be the third time I've seen it. I'm still trying to get over how horrible I look, but that's all right. It's always hard to see yourself on camera, right, Marj?
It's a wake-up call.
It is a wake-up call. Because I don't know. We all see ourselves one way, and then when you actually see it on camera, it's a little different. But it's not about us. So it's all about Nancy. Well, Marj, thank you so much for joining me today. It was really a delight.
My pleasure, Eileen. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And you were such a good friend to Nancy. You truly were. She cherished your relationship. I know that.
And yours as well. She had several friends that she met in connection with Sewing with Nancy, and they became treasured personal friends. And you were one of those, and I had the privilege of being one of those through the book.
Absolutely.
I was so honored when she asked me to work on it with her.
Oh, I imagine you would have been. I know how honored I was to just get a phone call from her, So when she asked you to participate in something, it was always absolutely, I'm all in, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There was never any doubt that what she was doing was the right thing at the right time.
That's right. Well, thank you, Marj. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Make sure you go register at quiltshow.com. And please take advantage of our special this week. That's what keeps us in business. And we really appreciate all of your business that you bring to Dime. So thank you very much. And Marj, you take care of yourself, and maybe we'll see you online, right?
All right.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.